So this is kind of like a part two, but it's more like we're going to try and link these together in one video. But in case I don't, this is a separate video. So I've got Rhys Melhuish. Now I think I've probably got your name wrong, so I apologise if I have done. But he's obviously he's at the other side of the river, a Newcastle fan. So so I think it's the first time I've actually had a Newcastle fan appearing on a Sunderland pod. So Rhys, first of all, you're right, and have I got your name wrong?
Yeah, I'm very, very well in just a bit. Melhuish.
Melhuish. Okay, right. I will bear that in mind for future reference then.
I've heard a lot worse. I've heard a lot worse. Don't worry.
Okay then, fair enough then. But either way, so obviously we had Peter on earlier as a Liverpool fan. We're trying to do some Premier League reactions, so to speak, from Prem fans about what's gone on at their respective clubs. And one of the I kind of wanted to get Rhys on as a Newcastle fan because Newcastle have had one of the more interesting transfer windows. Not necessarily in terms of the names they've brought in, although Rhys might want to correct me on that, but in terms of what's happened behind the scenes. So let's get into it straight away. I'm actually looking at the Sky Sports page and looking at your deals, and if my maths is right, you've let go 12 players. Well, not let go, but sold 12 players. And you've brought in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Although 2 of them, Stefan O'Connor and Joseph Yarni. Never heard of either of them.
Yeah, youth players from Arsenal and Everton, I believe. I think we made about 5 or 6 major first-team transfers.
Well, on here you've got Christian Atsu, obviously from Chelsea, who was on loan at Newcastle last year. Joselu from Stoke. Florian, I'm going to get this name wrong. Florian Lejeune from, is it Eibar? I think it's some sort of Spanish team in the Spanish, is it the second division of Spain or is it in La Liga?
No, for the La Liga, yeah, the first division.
Right, okay then. Obviously got Jacob Murphy from Norwich, and they've obviously got the lovely Javier Manquillo from Atletico Madrid. Obviously, for Sunderland fans, we all know what Manquillo was like last year, aka crap, apart from one good game. Although, to be fair, he didn't play very much. So I wanted to get... So you've told me previously, before we've gone on air, you've got quite a bit to talk about. So go and let it off your chest, man.
Yeah, it's just... I think I was in a little bit of a minority group of Newcastle fans when it came to, say, approaching the end of last season in the Championship. A lot of Newcastle fans were saying, when it comes to the summer, we're going to need to sign about 15 players. This squad is nowhere near good enough for the Premier League. We're going to need basically an entire new starting 11, this, that, and the other. And I really, really disagreed with that. I thought, your likes of your Joe Shelbys, your Matt Ritchies, and Kieran Clark, the players who were fantastic for us in the Championship, were more than capable of making the step up into the Premier League. And the thing that's so much different about this Newcastle team as to ones that we've had in previous Premier League seasons is that it doesn't have the specific quality that, say, Gini Wijnaldum does, but we have got some absolute grafters in that team, just players who will just work so hard for the team. And I think that's half the battle. If you've got the right mentality, the right attitude in the team, then you're gonna do well. People said, Blackburn did the double over us last season, who got relegated from the Championship, and we struggled again. Wolves at home and stuff, and it's just but we were everyone's team to beat in the Championship last season, and it might be naive to say this, but every Championship side probably raised their game when they came to St James's or they had Newcastle going to their ground. They thought this is a big game for us. Everyone wanted to beat Newcastle United last season, and you guys at Sunderland, it's probably going to be very similar for you this season. You haven't had a fantastic start, but you're probably the biggest club in the Championship. One of, if not the biggest side there. You've been in the Premier League for the last 10 years. Everyone's going to want to beat Sunderland in the Championship this season, and that's going to play a part. And we still won the league, and now we're coming up. We're not going to have teams parking the bus against us constantly. We're not going to have to go out and break teams down. We can sit back a little bit, control games, and counter. And when we did that game plan last season against teams like Brighton and Huddersfield, who were at the top of the up the top of the league, when we were playing them away from home, they attacked us. And we dealt with it. We dealt with it, countered them, etc. Game plan, brilliant. And that's the kind of game plan that would come more into effect in the Premier League this season. So, long story short, I waffled a bit there, but I didn't think we needed that many new players to come in. I thought, we've got the foundations of a good squad here, a very hard-working squad. what we just need to sprinkle some good bits of quality in the right areas. And we need players who get it as well, who have the similar kind of attitude, the similar kind of commitment as well. And we started off, bringing Atsu in permanently, who last year he did okay for Newcastle, but he ended the season very, very well. He scored a couple of really, really good, really important goals to help us win the league. And he played really, really well in the last couple of months of the season. I think that probably tipped the balance over for us to say, right, yeah, let's go get him permanently. And a lot of Newcastle fans were happy for that, and rightly so, because he started the Premier League season very well as well. We got in Florian Lejeune, as you said. This guy, he's a French centre-back from Eibar in Spain. And again, like Eibar are a club who I'm trying to think of like their English equivalent, but they don't have a lot of money really, and they've kind of built up from very little, using a lot of academy players, and they've established themselves as a mid-table La Liga side on very, very little, but by using players who just give their absolute all. And so I'm trying to think of an English equivalent. But
I would have said Southampton up till a couple of years ago, probably.
So yeah, Southampton's probably like along those lines. And Lejeune was like one of their star players last season, although he's a name that very few Newcastle fans knew his name before we were linked with him. And when we signed him, pretty much every other Premier League supporter in any other football fan in England would have been like, well, who's this? He's a nobody. But again, he looks like a proper centre half. He looks so good, so strong, and it's a very, very big shame that Harry Kane decided to just two-foot him from behind after half an hour on his Premier League debut, and we haven't seen him since. But the injury wasn't as bad as first feared. Lejeune's expected to come back in a few weeks, maybe even in time for the Swansea game, I'm not sure. But he looks a good bit of business. Jacob Murphy, who is England under 21 international, young player, a lot of potential, and is a massive Newcastle fan, which came about in the press, etc. when we were linked with him initially. This photograph of Jacob and Josh's twin brother appeared in like Newcastle shirts from when they were like really young kids, and then it was just apparently they're both massive Newcastle fans, even though they were born in London and lived in Norwich, etc. But then when we signed him, Jacob was saying in the signing interview that his mum's from Birdley and his grandparents are in Ashton, things along those lines. So yeah, he's a big Newcastle fan, and for him, the move to Newcastle is his dream move. Again, that's the kind of players you want. We got Manquillo in, which was a bit of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I would say the least. That sounded a very strange one, because I thought if there was any scouts, I mean, I would only imagine you got Manquillo because he probably wasn't. I mean, you may disagree with me on this. I'm not entirely sure Manquillo would have been Benitez's first choice, because I think Yedlin's better than Manquillo personally. So
yeah, I think Manquillo was brought in as a backup. But Yedlin has been injured for the start of this season. When Yedlin comes back, I fully expect Yedlin will be first choice again. So I guess we did need a backup right back with maybe a bit more pace. We let Vernon Anita, who played right back a lot last season, he went on a free to Leeds. We've got Jesus Gomez as well, who play either full back position. He doesn't. He's been injured a lot as well. He's had fitness problems, and he doesn't kind of have the pace that I suppose a Benitez counter-attacking fullback would probably need. So get Manquillo in, and it's probably the most underwhelming signing of a lot of them, because we all, we saw that the easiest way to do for a player like that, who you might not have seen as much, is to have a look at the reaction of the club he's just left. And like, no Sunderland fan was sad to see him go to Newcastle. I was just like, this could be a bit different. It wasn't like a bitterness side of things from Sunderland, because I remember when we signed Yedlin, you guys were quite annoyed that we had signed like Yedlin. You guys wanted to have him permanently, and you could tell by that reaction that, okay, maybe we've got ourselves a good player here. But with Manquillo, you guys were just like, yeah, we could not care less. He's probably one of the worst fullbacks we've ever seen in a Sunderland shirt, along those lines. To Manquillo's credit, he started the season fairly well. Going forward, he looks great defensively. Very questionable, but that was the same thing for Yedlin when he first joined. But Benitez has coached a lot of defensive kind of smartness, if you like, into his game. So hopefully he can do the same with Manquillo. Too early to judge with that, I think, but he probably will just be a backup, as you say. And then Joselu comes in. getting a player when I first saw the link saying that we'd made a bid, I was just like, isn't he like Stoke's third choice striker? Like, what's all this about? But then when the deal kind of advanced, there was again, similar thing. Looking at the reaction of the club he's leaving, a lot of Stoke fans were really, really annoyed he was leaving. Said he hadn't been given a chance. When he had been given a chance, he looked very good, but Mark Hughes didn't like him apparently and just wouldn't play him. So we ended up getting him for $5 million, which for a Premier League striker is a very good deal. First Premier League start, he scores, and he looks a good player. He holds the ball up well. He looks very intelligent. You go on YouTube, see some of the goals he scored on loan in the last couple of seasons in Germany and Spain, and he's got one heck of a shot on him. So hopefully he can do all right for us. Mitrovic has picked up his ban. Dwight Gale is very
Dwight Gale at the moment. He's having what's up with Dwight Gale? Is he having a bit of a psychological problem or something? Apparently it's a mixture of physical and psychological issues that he's got. But I don't get how he can have a psychological issue. I mean, I'm not trying to take away from it or make light of it or anything. But he was fantastic for you last year. So I don't see what the issue, unless it's from an injury, which seems to be the case. I don't know.
I think it is basically all down to the injury. First half of last season, it was absolutely fantastic. The second half of last season, he still scored a lot of goals, but he did miss a lot of games, and there was a lot of games, Aston Villa at home springs to mind in particular, there he started and he just did not look fit, and he didn't look confident in himself. I imagine the medical staff, etc., probably are all telling him, your hamstring is fine, you're good to go, but he just physically doesn't, and mentally doesn't have the confidence in his hamstring. Like, he might not want to stretch that extra inch to get on the end of a cross in case it goes, just having that, like the fragility of it all, and he just isn't confident in his own body to stay fit, which I think that's what they were trying to get at with the mental kind of psychological side of things. But it is basically all down to do with his fitness. It was such a bizarre end of the season as far as Dwight Gale went. Like, he's a goal scorer, right? He scores a lot of goals. In the Premier League, can he do it? I want to see him given a shot to do it. His first couple of games in the Premier League, he started against Spurs, he started against Huddersfield, and it was a similar thing. Like, he just didn't look fit. And a fully fit Dwight Gale is a great asset to have, and he'll get a lot of goals. But whether or not he can get and stay fully fit is another thing, and I think that's why Newcastle were potentially open to the idea of possibly selling him. But when this £15 million bid from Fulham comes in on like the penultimate day of the transfer window, like, the stories were saying on Newcastle will sell Dwight Gale if they can get a replacement in. I just like, what's that going to do for the lad's confidence? He's already not confident in his hamstring, etc., and his fitness, and now he's seeing stories that apparently the club will sell him if a good offer comes in. I was just, now you're telling me surplus to requirements, even though he was our top scorer last season, the second top scorer in the league last season, and he would have been first if it wasn't for the injuries. His goals to minute ratio last year was ridiculously good, and that was just really bizarre. So, I think he's still a bit unfit now. Hopefully, when Gale comes back, he'll have a point to prove, and he can push on and get some goals this year. But that was all a bit farcical. That the way that the whole Dwight Gale situation ended, and it just kicked off a lot of bizarre, like a really bizarre mood. Like, throughout deadline day for Newcastle, it was just, all summer long, we'd been linked with Lucas Perez from Arsenal. £13 million was the asking price, which we apparently didn't have. And here comes Fulham from the Championship, bidding £15 million for one of our players. And it's just, right, I mean, I'm absolutely fine with not being able to compete with your Manchesters, your Liverpools, your Arsenals, etc. And even last season, we had the new Premier League TV rights money. Your Evertons, your Bournemouths, your West Broms, they got a lot of money for being in the Premier League last year, and they will spend a lot of money in this summer, because of that. And again, that's fair. We weren't in the Premier League last season. We don't have the same money that those clubs did. That's fine. That's totally acceptable. Brighton also weren't in the Premier League last year, spent a lot more than us. Huddersfield, not in the Premier League last year, spent a lot more than us. Fulham weren't in the Premier League last year, aren't in the Premier League this year, yet are still managing to outspend us, or put in bids of £15 million, which is only £1 million shy off our club transfer record of all time. It's just, how is that allowed? We do just appear to have the worst billionaire owner of all time in Mike Ashley, who just cannot. like he just refuses to put any more money into the club. He's done a lot. And like he's put a lot of money in, and he's cleared a lot of our debt and everything, which is fair enough. But now he's saying I refuse to write a £200 million check for a superstar striker, and we're not asking for that. We're asking for £13 million. Like it's just that's not that unreasonable to expect from your owner. And he's just saying, it's got to be self-sufficient. The money the club makes, I'll not take out. The money the club makes, the money the club will keep and spend and reinvest. So hopefully, from now on, we will have money to spend from big in the Premier League now. That money, TV rights deal, etc., will come through. We've sold a lot of season tickets and stuff like that. That'll kind of begin to snowball a little bit, and we can have some money to spend. Hopefully in January, and if we stay up, we can really push on from next summer. But again, this last week or so has just filled Newcastle with dread. Benitez doesn't look like he sees Newcastle as his long-term project anymore. He's lost a lot of trust in the board and the management. He doesn't believe he can do the job he wants to do anymore, and it's just created a whole lot of negativity around the whole club.
I can tell by the sound of your voice. I can tell by the sound of your voice. You're saying that. I mean, to be fair, I think I was going to ask you about Benitez actually, because as far as I'm concerned, I think you made the very good point about you're not having the TV money from the likes of the Bournemouth and the Watfords and whoever else. And yeah, the point about Brighton Huddersfield, that's fine. And obviously, as a Sunderland fan, given the frustrations we're going through in the transfer market, even though it's well documented we're in debt, we couldn't even splash out, say, 10 million on someone like Jordan Rhodes, who I think is instantly better than James Vaughan. But as far as you're concerned, I mean, it is forgotten. I think you probably have spent around about 30 to 35 million, if my maths are right. But in Premier League terms, that's probably nothing compared to what a lot of other clubs. And it is quite depressing, I would say, when you look at the clubs like Bournemouth and Watford, who, Watford especially, I see as a very, not tin pot, but a very, no, I don't, how they can, I don't get it. I mean, what's your thoughts on Benitez? I suppose is the next question. I mean, how are you worried that he might walk?
Yes, but I don't think he's going to walk anytime soon. As in, he's not going to. A lot of people say, he'll probably pack his bags before the next game. That's not going to happen. He's not going to walk away from the challenge. I think he will stay at Newcastle. What I can see happening is, we'll get to the end of the season. We still won't have spent a lot of money. This feeling of mistrust, negativity. We'll have another horrible January transfer window where nothing happens. And, this will all bubble on and it'll be horrendous. But Benitez will pull off some kind of managerial masterclass. He'll keep up on the last day of the season. We'll finish 16th. We'll keep our Premier League status. Benitez, in his eyes, job done. In the eyes of everyone else, he's kept Newcastle up for this season. Job done. And then he'll probably walk away when he gets a better offer from the likes of West Ham, who's been eyeing him up. I wouldn't like to admit that West Ham is a bigger, better proposition for Benitez than Newcastle United, but when you've got owners who are willing to actually spend money and be ambitious, I'd rather go to West Ham than Newcastle United right now. If you took away the fact I supported Newcastle, like as a manager, which set of which board would you rather work under? Like, fair enough, Sullivan goals time have a lot of issues, a lot of problems, but they back their managers. They give them money to do what they want to do with the squads, and that's all Benitez wants. He doesn't want hundreds of millions of pounds to build a Champions League challenging team or anything like that. He wants to, use the money that he has to do what he has to do. Like, he wanted to sign Tammy Abraham loan at the start of the season. He wanted to sign Willie Caballero on a free at the start of the season. Those are more than reasonable deals to try and pull off, and the board weren't able to do it. They couldn't stump up a £2 million loan fee for Tammy Abraham. They said that was unreasonable. Willie Caballero, a little bit different. He opted to go to Chelsea instead. I mean, if a player wants to be a number 2 at Chelsea rather than a number 1 at Newcastle, fair duty for a lack of ambition. But yeah, that's down to the player rather than us, I would say. But stuff like that, just it didn't happen. You come to deadline day and Benitez is really, really pushing the fact that we need a left back, because Paul Dunwick, another player who got injured in the first game of the season against Spurs, he's going to be out for a good few months. We don't have a current fit left back. Our backup left back, Masario Hadara, has been injured for about 4 years now. He makes the odd appearance, but he's clearly not thought of well by Benitez. He's not fit enough or good enough, etc. So we need another left back. Chancellor Mbemba is not a left back, and he's been playing left back for since Dummett got injured. You make a move for Matt Targett, Southampton.
Yeah, I saw that. That sounded like a bit of a farce. What happened there? Apparently, you're getting like a loan deal for sorry. Apparently, you're getting a loan deal for was it loan deal for the end of the season or something, and then that ended up falling through.
Just a loan deal, for Matt Targett to as backup. And you think, right, again, on the face of it, it's underwhelming, but it's what we need. We need another left back in that squad, a backup, a young lad come up, he needs to play football. It could work well. And even that, we can't make that happen. You see West Brom convincing, I don't know how to pronounce the lad's name, but
Kieran Gibbs? Oh, no, okay, never mind.
Yeah, the guy from PSG and Kieran Gibbs, two fantastic signings. You see Stoke getting Hesse Rodriguez, and we kind of convince Southampton's third choice left back to join us on loan for this season. What on earth is going on there? Is it just the club aren't trying hard enough to convince these players to join? Is it, maybe it was an agent deal where they wanted an agent's fee or something along those lines, and it was just unreasonable? Because I'm fully I'm okay with the fact that earlier in the season, we were looking at some players and the clubs were just wanting stupid money for them. It was just even if it is a player you like, even if it's a player you need, you're not going to pay triple what they're worth just to get them in. There's no point in doing that. You don't. Yeah, I'm fair enough for not doing that. But how can you not? How can you not convince Matt Targett to come on loan for a season? He's not going to play football at Southampton this year. You'll get the odd game up here. If he plays well, he could become first choice. And just ridiculous. One I will mention, actually, we haven't touched on him yet, but the lad we brought in, Miguel Merino, on an initial loan from Bournemouth, but with an option for a £6 million transfer. My God, that looks like it could be the signing of the season. I'm not he looks such a good player. He's only 21 years old. And if we do get him permanently, it'll be for about 7 million altogether. He looks absolutely sensational. In the games that we've watched of him so far, he's such a classy player. You should see the goal he scored for Spain under 21s there the other night, man. It was wow. I think the main positive of the window so far has been signing him. He looks like an absolute gem.
Well, I'll tell you what. Apparently he was a man. I'll tell you what, I'll kind of lead on to another point. Was he man of the match against West Ham? Because I know you beat them obviously 3-0 a week ago.
Man of the match. I would have personally given it to Matt Ritchie on the day because he was fantastic. But no, both Ritchie and Marino were absolutely sensational that day, so I can't have many problems getting man of the match. But yeah, he looks such a good player.
Well, one thing I would ask then, at the moment, I want to try and get this. I want to try and talk a slight little bit about the Premier League. But at the same time, I think, do you think your squad has enough in it right now to stay up? Because I think that's got to be the aim for you this year, especially considering you didn't get the money last year. Stay up and then benefit from it next season.
I can't disagree with that at all. That was always my plan. Was just we can't expect to be doing much this year, and just try and do as well as we can. Minimum goal, stay up, and kick on next year. Establish ourselves in the Premier League again. Try and see if we can push on into a mid-table side. Just a comfortable side that isn't having to worry about relegation each year. And maybe within 5 years or so, we can get ourselves in Everton's kind of position and push on in trying to somewhat attack the domestic cups. Maybe even be outside contention for Europa League, kind of European contention. You just want to challenge. I don't care. I don't
exactly.
care where we're challenging. Newcastle fans have this label that we're all deluded and we expect to be challenging for Champions League football. It's just it's not challenging for titles, Champions League football. We just want to challenge. We just want to have a purpose other than to simply exist, which under Mike Ashley is all that he's ever wanted to do, is just to exist, survive, just
to get the money, basically. Yeah.
Get the money for it.
I'll tell you what.
We want to challenge. Just look to get better. That's all we want to do. Just try and get better. Even have a fantastic season. When we finished 5th in 2012. Get better. Why, right? You finished 5th one season. Why can't you try and finish 4th the next? We nearly did it that year. It's just, why can't you try and do that? And then that was never going to happen. Why not? Just try. That's just the key word. Just try. It might not happen. If it doesn't, fair dues. We could have fell away and finished ninth or something that season. But if we gave it a go, that's all we needed to do. But that season afterwards, we didn't. We bought one player in the summer, and just that was that. It was ridiculous.
I think I might try and stop you there before you end up running yourself into the ground there. Christ.
Yeah, go for it, man.
I think one of the things I would mention is you've probably heard George Corkin, a journalist from the Times, and I've listened to a few Sunderland podcasts. There's one called Wise Men Say that I've listened to, and he made a very good point, and you sort of touched upon it, where you don't want to just be in the Premier League just to exist in the Premier League. And he said that Sunderland, and I think you can probably apply this to Newcastle as well, that both clubs should be just about more than just hanging on every single season for the sake of being shit the next season and losing to shit teams, just for the sake of staying in the league. For example, what's the point in us constantly just staying in the Premier League to then just go and lose to Middlesbrough? What's the point in us staying in the league to go and lose to Stoke? I don't get the. You're right. I think that if you're in the Premier League, particularly, there has to be a purpose to it. I think that I would agree that in the first season. So say for example, in the very unlikely event that we go up this year, next year, consolidate, stay up, no problem with that. Second year, fine. But you've probably seen me mention this on Twitter thousands of times, and you're probably sick of it. By the time that last year was our 10th in the Premier League, and by the time we got to our 10th year in the Premier League, we were still in the same position and not improving. When I see teams around us that we are bigger than constantly come up and do better, I found that just as frustrating as what you're clearly finding it. Because although I don't expect us to challenge for Europa Leagues or anything, but just to not be battling relegation, I think was a pretty, be comfortable every year of staying up and then maybe go for it from there is probably realistic. And by the sound of it, you're saying the same thing. As far as this season goes, I think you've got enough to stay up, but I think that's because I think Brighton. I don't know much about Brighton. I mean, I know they signed Tim Krul on the last day. Brighton, I don't think have that much. I think Burnley, they'll still struggle. Huddersfield, I pray to God I'm wrong about them because I really want them to stay up, but I think they'll struggle later on. There are some pretty poor teams down the bottom end of the league. So, one question I want to ask you then is, and I asked this to Peter Phelps the other day earlier, is there anyone outside of Newcastle, is there any particular team or business or anything that's made that you've sort of got you thinking, wow, that's a really good signing? For example, earlier I said Lukaku and Matic at Man United, I think, are the two best deals in the window, and I think Man United have improved the spine of their team and improved the best out of a lot of them, which is why I think they'll win the league. I mean, so along those lines, is there anyone that you think, wow, they've done some good business here?
Yeah, well, it's hard to disagree with the point about Man United. They look absolutely frightening, don't they? The start
ridiculously
started the season like a house on fire,
and they've only got Ibrahimovic to come back later, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly, man. But Matic is probably gonna, be one of the signings of the season. Why Chelsea let him go for £40 million? Like for me, like 40 million for Matic is a fair deal. And this has been the transfer window of extortionate prices. Like, how can Matic go for 40 million and Kyle Walker go for 50? How does that make any sense at all? Yeah, Man United have done some fantastic business, but I touched on it earlier. For me, West Brom have got in some fantastic players. Like, they haven't lost any of the key players from last year who did really well for them. The likes of Matt Phillips had a fantastic season. They've got there some real quality going forward, like Nasser Chadley as well. But to bring in James Rodriguez, again, some fitness doubts, but there's a good player in there. The lad from PSG, Koryciak, he's a fantastic player. It was an absolute machine. He struggled somewhat to get into the team at PSG, but that's, not a lot of players can do that. And, Kieran Gibbs, I was desperate for us to sign him. It didn't happen. You get 7 million. That's a very, very fair deal. I think West Brom have signed some good players. They've got Higazi in as well, who looks like he's going to be a menace from set pieces. Already got himself a goal this year. West Brom have got some good business, could really look to break into the top 7. I suppose you've got to give a mention to Everton as well. They've brought in a lot of players, though they've brought in a lot of very similar players at the same time.
Yeah,
as well.
I think Everton
have signed a lot of number.
Yeah, I'd say that Everton's business.
I'm not sure
the only thing I question from Everton's point of view is that they didn't sign a direct replacement for Lukaku, which obviously is difficult, but they've signed. I think they're going to reduce the amount of goals that they're going to concede this year. I think Pickford, obviously, I know from Sun that he's a fantastic keeper, and I've got no doubt in a few years they'll think 30 million is a bargain for him. I think they've got Michael Keane, who I think was was he Burnley's Player of the Year last year, if I remember rightly, or certainly was up there for. He certainly performed exceptionally well for them. You've got Wayne Rooney obviously coming back. You've got Davy Klaassen. You've got Gylfi Sigurdsson. They're really going to try and make a step up and establish themselves. But I mean, obviously you mentioned there's a couple of other things I want to talk about. The first thing you mentioned is the transfer window of extortionate prices. I've got this theory that might be bullshit. I don't know, but in my opinion, the way it's going, football could potentially go bankrupt at this point because there's so much money being thrown around all over the place that eventually it's going to run out somewhere unless people keep on throwing money at Sky or throwing money at the new TV packages, and then you get loads of money from that. What do you think? Where do you see football going as a sport if ridiculous money keeps getting thrown around like this?
I dread to even think about it. To be honest, it is absolutely disgusting. Like it's one, I don't know if you kind of ever experienced this. Obviously, we're both big football fans. Do you ever find yourself in the pub or something having a conversation with people who aren't football fans, and then they find out you are a football fan? They're like, how can you justify liking the sport when look at the amount of money that or the wages, etc. And you're just you're constantly sat there thinking, yeah, I know, I agree, it is absolutely disgusting, but I cannot help supporting my team and loving the sport, But
completely agree.
No, it's the amount of money it is absolutely shocking, but at the same time, what can you do about it? We can't really wage cap people, you can't transfer cap things. It's just, it is just going to grow and grow. It is just going to inflate.
It's absolutely absurd that
it is. I dread to even think about what's coming next as far as that goes. Just wouldn't. Nah.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't blame you for thinking that. I just think that there's just a possibility. I think that it's just going to go bust at one point because it goes all over the place. I mean, you look at Neymar going for just under 200 million. You look at Coutinho being linked with Barcelona for 115 million. You look at Van Dijk alone, 70 million. Lukaku going for 90, and it's come on, are these players? I mean, what is it that's just suddenly had this transfer inflation? It's no.
It's been mad. I was watching Deadline Day on Sky Sports the other day, and my flatmate, she walked in and saw the TV and saw that I can't remember which player it was, but it was basically someone had went somewhere for 20 million, and she was like, "How on earth can one person be worth 20 million pounds?" This saying 20 million is an absurd amount for a footballer, and I just turned to her and I was just like, "Do you want to know how much the most expensive footballer in the world is?" And she was just like, "What, 30 million?" I was like, 198 million, and then she just she just said no and just walked out of the room, just disgusted at that. And I was just like, yeah, it's one person because of how good he is at football is worth 198 million pounds.
And even in that in transfer inflation, we can't even spend £2 million across the whole summer.
You would, I don't know what to make of the situation with Sunderland. I know you have got a lot of debt and stuff, but to be fair, the business you've done this season has been good business.
I'd agree.
Aidan McGeady, £250,000 or something. I was just like, you can't argue with that at all. You've done well there. Even the players you brought in on deadline day, Johnny Williams on loan, it's a good bit of business. Mark Wilson on a free, I feel like that'll be good. Callum McManaman, as a Newcastle fan,
obviously we'll take out the horrendous tackle that he did a few years ago.
Him. Yeah,
can't say I blame you.
A horrible credit for what he did to Haidara, but again, decent player. Probably he could do well for you. You've got in James Vaughan, who had an incredible season with Bury. Lewis Grabban scores goals in the Championship. He's along the kind of Cameron Jerome build of that. He's probably not good enough for the Premier League, but will do a job in the Championship. My only worry for you guys is that should you go up, what's the plan then? Because you don't have the money to build an entirely new squad.
Exactly.
Should you go?
And the team we've got now, the team we've got now is nowhere near capable of mounting anything in the Premier League. It's not even close to it. And you got to remember, we've got probably half the signings we've made. I think Grabban, Brendan Galloway, who can go back to Everton as far as I'm concerned. He's useless from what I've seen of him. Tyus Browning, and who's the other one on loan we had? Johnny Williams. They'll go back to their clubs. I mean, like you said yourself, we're not going to have much money. I mean, we obviously got this does kind of frustrate me a little bit that we've got 100 million. We will get. I don't know if you get it straight away, but over the course of the season, or the course of the next however long it takes, we'll get 100 million about for after getting relegated from the Prem, finishing bottom. Parachute payments as well. That's about 40 million the first season, I think. We've got 30 million from the Pickford deal, albeit not all up front, but we will get a deal totaling around about 30 million. And I've got no issue with the majority of that going on the debt, because that's fine, that's got to be dealt with. But I can't help but feel like you could, the board, I mean, I think Martin Bain, for example, has got a lot of unfair stick, and I still stand by that. I think he has done a good job given what has been at his disposal. He's been brought in to restructure the club. That can't be done in just 1 year, and people need to remember that. It has to be done over at least 3 or 4 years, truth be told, probably longer. So, but I can't question, I do question, couldn't a bit of money have been released to get a striker? Because my concern, I'm happy with the deals we've done in a general context, with the exception of Jason Steele, James Vaughan, and potentially Galloway. Every other deal I can't complain about. But what I am a bit concerned about is we don't have a goal scorer. Now, I know you mentioned Graben obviously scores goals in the Championship. I would back him to get probably 10 to 15 goals. But to me, and you've had it last year, and I've said it constantly all summer, and it drives me mad that we didn't get it still. Match winners. Match winners, match winners, match winners. You had Shelby, who dictated games in the Championship. Well, from what I saw, and from what a lot of you were saying, dictated games in the Championship for you. Matt Ritchie, Matt Ritchie, huge signing in the Championship. I think he's a Premier League player personally. Dwight Gale got you 25 goals, probably more. You know, we needed players like. Now we were never going to have the money to get players like that, but I thought if you just get a goal scorer, it gives you such a better chance of going up. And even then, the games I've watched, I went to Barnsley last week, which I won't want to talk about. We played Derby early on, and I think against Leeds and even against Sheffield Wednesday. I didn't watch the Leeds or Sheffield Wed games, but in all games, all 4 of those games, every game with the exception of Norwich in the Championship, there's been a pattern. Sunderland start well, dominate, create loads of chances, don't take them, and don't win. If you had a goal score, and I just thought Barnsley, we had two good chances to take the lead at 0-0. I just thought if you had a quality goal scorer, this game would be dead and buried. This game would be done.
You guys were linked with like Rhys Melhuish on loan for quite a lot, didn't you? But that didn't happen for whatever reason. Like he's been, not really doing much at Aston Villa. I think he's kind of been a bit of an outcast since he joined there. But he's one of those, he probably guarantee you goals. And I was a little bit surprised that you didn't make more of an effort to get him in because even on a loan, I thought that could have worked out well for you.
The only thing I would have suggested, I don't think Steve. I mean, it was mentioned in the Sun or the Daily Star, whatever it is. So I didn't really take it too seriously, but they did mention the point, and it's a fair point that I mentioned all summer. Why would Villa want a loner striker who is lethal in the Championship? With the last season he struggled, but every other season he's done brilliantly. He's lethal in that league. Why would you loan him to a club that's just got relegated, who would aim to try and get back up, and has the same aim as what you've got? So at the same time, I thought, well, if that doesn't go through, then what's your plan B? I don't.
That's fair.
I don't understand that. But either way, it is frustrating. Well, this sort of leads on to the last point I want to talk about. Does it depress you about the state of North East football at the minute? Because obviously we're in the Championship. I mean, I think you'd probably agree, fair enough. I'm not saying for 1 second either of us are too big for the Championship because you have to earn the right to be in the Premier League. But we are bigger. The pair of us, I think, are bigger than half the clubs in the Premier League. And I think, Bournemouth, I like Bournemouth, don't get me wrong, and Burnley, I like them. But Burnley, Bournemouth, Watford, Palace, Stoke. I know Stoke have done well, but Brighton, Huddersfield. It's like, how can? It's just so annoys me. It drives me up the wall that we're not seen as.
It's a way like.
Go on, because I'm gonna.
The way that I like to think about it is, I just say the whole idea of the size of a club. Just don't just avoid that because it's just. Not only is it an argument that is going to drive you mad, as you've said, I don't think it makes any sense. Like, what is it that defines how big a club is? Like, what is it? Is it the trophies you win? Is it is it your history to be a Liverpool fan's words? I just don't get it. Like, I would try and argue that Newcastle United are a big club, but at the same time, what defines that? Is it because we've got a big stadium, we've got a lot of fans, but we haven't won anything in over 50 years or something. We've been relegated twice in the last 10 years. I'm just not sure what does make us a big club right now. Like we've got a fantastic fan base. I mean, I just what defines a big club? Like, is it your brand? Is it if you fly over to the far east of Russia, find a football fan. Do you say, do you know Newcastle United? And they say, yeah, I know Newcastle United. Does that make you a big club? Like, I just, whereas, you know, or do you know who Derby County are? They might not say, well, no, I don't know who they are. Like, I don't know what makes a big club. Like, for me, the clubs that are all in the Premier League right now should be there. You know, from next season, the 20 clubs that'll be in the Premier League should be there. Like, it's just you earn your way up there through the structure, the in the football club in such a way that the likes of Swansea did to rebuild from almost going out of the Football League to Premier League within the next 10 years. It's the hard work that goes into football clubs, like behind the scenes, at places like Swansea, at places like Bournemouth and Southampton. Those are the clubs that earn you your Premier League rights. Just because you won the Champions League in 1970, like Nottingham Forest did, doesn't mean you should be a Premier League club now. Like, it's just the whole concept of what makes a big club. Are we bigger than, like, are we a bigger club than Stoke? Like, I'd like to think so, but at the same time, Stoke have spent the last 9 years or so in the Premier League. We've spent 2 of those in the Championship. We've probably finished below Stoke in the majority of those seasons. Like, I don't know what defines it, who makes the rules, who draws up the criteria for that thing. So one advice I would give you is just the whole big club side of things. Just ignore it. Don't think about it. Don't let that enter your thinking. Otherwise, you're just going to annoy, upset, and confuse yourself.
I think I'm already past that point. I think what I would define as a big, well, this could sound strange. I would define a big club as one that's, this is going to sound such a pathetic argument probably, but it's like the size of a stadium you've got, the fans you get, facilities you have. I think Sunderland and Newcastle both have that, whereas a lot of, I mean, you look at, there's an example. Now, this isn't the fault of Bournemouth, for example, but they've got a stadium that barely fills 15,000 people. Now, that's because that's the size of the stadium, that's the amount of fans that they'll get. And I like Bournemouth, I like what they've done, I like Eddie Howe, I like the football they play, and some of the players they've signed this summer, by the way, I think are very good. But at the same time, it did depress me a lot when, I mean, you mentioned Stoke being there 9 years from the Premier League. People forget, until this season, we were in there for 10. So I would think that when I say we should be doing better, for example, I mean that Sunderland should have been managed like how Southampton were managed, like how Stoke up until recently, arguably, were managed. And it's at the point when, and like Newcastle, I mean, to be fair, I think both clubs have been heavily mismanaged to the point where that both have suffered relegation in the last few years. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be a case, I mean, but the argument there is that you have to pay extra money up here to get average players to sign up here because obviously the area. And that kind of, and as realistic as that is, that really annoys and angers me because, like, well, it shouldn't be, if it's solely about the area, then why are you playing football? I mean, I know you want to live in a decent area and all, but surely you've got to care a little bit about playing football. I mean, would you rather go and be second choice at Watford, or would you rather go and be first choice up here in the North East and be loved by the fans? I don't get that. That annoys me that a lot. But I suppose it depends on how the perspective of someone coming into the country isn't going to think that way. I don't know. I think it's got the point now with North East football. I mean, to me, there's already a massive switch to south of England, and that's not really how it should be. But at the same time, like you said, clubs like Brighton and Bournemouth, don't get us wrong, and Southampton have earned the right to be in the Premier League because they've got themselves into that position. So, I mean, everyone goes on about the fact that we just avoided relegation by skin of our teeth, can we just go down? But by that logic, we've earned the right to be in the Premier League again because we stayed up. So, even though for me, I've said countless times it's been an application problem because I felt that Sunderland, certainly last season, yeah, it's questionable, but I think Sunderland have had players there that have been better than what they showed for 2/3 of the season because everyone keeps saying that we were... Sorry, guys, I'm not going to make this a tangent about Sunderland too much, but everyone keeps saying, for example, we're not good enough to do more than relegation battles because that's why we're in them. But my counter-argument is every year, but we're good enough to stay up at the end. So we're good enough to say what happens in the last 10... I'm sure you've experienced this. What happens in the last 10 games? You try, you give that extra 10%. So if you did that in the first 2/3 of the season, might not have been down there, right? But
yeah.
Don't know what you think.
Like, you just didn't ever look to try and like do any better the next year.
Yeah,
like trying to mid-table, like just the players you signed, like whose idea was it to spend like 16 million on Fabio Borini, for God's sake? Jesus Christ, he's one of the worst footballers I've ever seen. Like, because he scored one derby winner against Newcastle. All the Sunderland fans love him, and like fair enough, it was a cracking strike. But my God, Fabio Borini is not a good footballer, and you just like you brought him in on loan. He didn't even do that good on loan, and you just we'll go spend 16 million on him. Like, it's
to be fair,
madness,
that's one area where I will just.
that.
That's one area I will slightly disagree because I don't think Breen's a terrible footballer. I'm not basing that mind off the goals he scored. I'm not basing that off the goals he scored against you because if you look at it from that perspective, yeah, he's. I don't expect Breeny to be a goal scorer by any stretch of the imagination. I think he is. This is gonna sound so northeast to say this, but until last season, he was one of those players that worked, to quote Kevin Ball, worked his proverbials off to constantly try and press teams, win the ball. But I mean, for example, the game we went to your place. The year you got relegated, season before last, Barini was in Colback's head the whole game. Now you can debate all day how good Colback or Barini is, but that's the sort of thing. That's what Barini can do. That's what he's capable of. Is he a good goal scorer? Heck no. He shouldn't be playing anywhere near up front because he can't score. But there is positions, there is places for like players like that in the team. Saying that, I mean obviously Barini. I mean it's the same thing. It's not just Barini. To be fair, it's like. Stephen Fletcher was one example. Scored a couple of goals against you, and it's like, yeah, whoop-de-doo. 36 other games in the season. Have you noticed?
Yeah.
That's the thing. I can see where you're coming from, though. I mean, that's the thing. Northeast clubs, I think, have the lack of ambition. It's like we need to be in the Premier League to do what? Well, we just need to be there to do what? That's the point. What and that's one of the things I would. I mean, you probably enjoyed the Championship a lot certainly in the earlier part of last season. You'd have enjoyed winning a lot of games and so on. And it's that classic old debate. Would you rather be struggling in the Premier League? How's losing regularly in the Premier League better than winning in the Championship? I understand from a financial perspective, clubs are better off in the Prem. But as a fan, do you enjoy getting hammered? I didn't enjoy getting hammered every week off crap teams in the Premier League. It's not fun. You want to see your team win more than anything else.
Yeah.
But that's another debate for another day. I just feel, I don't know, but like I said, I just feel like, does it not worry you a little bit that North East football's kind of gone a bit up the Swanee because of the shift towards the south of England?
Yeah, no, it really does. It's been happening for the last few years now. It's sad to see, but you think, back in the days when Newcastle, Borough, Sunderland were all in the Premier League, and then you had teams like kind of Hull and Leeds, who are fairly close by and stuff, were kind of giving it a go in the Premier League as well. Like Leeds used to be a ridiculous club, but now they're just kind of they might get themselves back up from the Championship this year, and I would like to see them do so. Because I think Leeds are one of them clubs that I just like to see back in the Premier League. They have like the stature of a Premier League club, but yeah, it's just the majority. There is just such a shift. I mean, our derby this season is Burnley. Like that's our most geographically close like team, which is just absolute madness. But you just look at the it's mainly like for the away days and everything, which is ridiculous as far as we're concerned. Like having to make trips to Swansea, Brighton, Southampton, etc. It's like all of the London clubs. Like for us, that's quite a trek. But yeah, it's just so many players and clubs and investors and that the owners and stuff would rather go and get themselves a Manchester club or a London club as opposed to one up in the northeast because it's cold and it rains a lot and it's for whatever reason it's just not as attractive. I don't know, but it is sad. It is quite a shame.
I would say that, as far as you mentioned with the cold and rainy thing a lot, this is just a problem in Britain generally, not just the northeast. So there really shouldn't be. No, it just annoys us that people prefer to go to the likes of Watford and Palace and whatnot than the likes of us too. Because I do think, I mean, again, to be fair, like I said, obviously, if you're talking in the context of the Premier League, we're not there, so I can't really mention us too much. But bigger again in my. I mean, we had this whole big club debate earlier, but to me, yous are bigger than probably likes of Bournemouth. You're bigger than Stoke. I would think yous are. I think you're bigger. I think you're definitely bigger than Watford. I think you're bigger than Brighton. I think Huddersfield. I like Huddersfield a lot, by the way, but I think you're bigger than Huddersfield. No, that's 6 teams I've just mentioned off the top of my head, and that's kind of the point. That really, truth be told, tell me if you disagree with this. Both Newcastle. Well, you could argue Borough in this, but take it Sunderland and Newcastle both in the equation. If both clubs were managed properly, both I think have a lot of potential to be challenging for, say, domestic cups every year, maybe potentially push on the brinks of Europe. So is that fair? Am I just being deluded when I say that? I don't know.
But you'd like to think so, isn't it? But that's like you'd want to do that, like regardless of like you touched on the management problem. Like even if both clubs were managed properly, if everything went fine, and like we didn't have any internal backroom problems and stuff like that. If both clubs just had owners that wanted to just get on with it and just have a go, etc., and make the club the best that it was, there's no guarantee that would be in and around the European places, Newcastle or Sunderland. But just the whole point of it is just to try and get there, which would be nice. And I feel like neither Newcastle nor Sunderland wants to even try and be there. I mean, I don't even know what Sunderland's aim is this season. I think they're just praying that they don't go into League One at the minute. And I don't know if they want to survive in the Championship and then try and get promoted next season, if they want to bounce back immediately, which, judging by the business, doesn't look like it's going to be the aim. And for us, what do we want? Yeah, short term, we want to survive. And what from then? Just keep surviving, like turn into the next Sunderland and just try and scrape relegation for the next 10 years? Like, what do they want us to do? Which I don't know. But if we did, like we were playing European football just 5 seasons ago. Like that's like 5 years ago. That's really not that long. Like, and reaching the quarterfinals of the Europa League in 2013. Like it's like 4 years ago even. Like it's into this, like it's just try, push on, like just give us a reason to be proud of and feel like we've got a club that's wanting to achieve things. And if you get to that point in the city of Sunderland gets behind that club, the city of Newcastle gets behind its club, and they're all just pulling in the same direction under it, with a good manager and a good squad, a hard-working club. You just don't know what you can achieve, and that should be the beauty of football, rather than just to merely exist. I'm not going to say that Sunderland, well run, would be challenging for Europa League places, because it's been quite some since you were in European contention. But that's the point. You never know, and if you don't know, that makes it exciting. If there's the chance that it can happen, that's why you like football. But at the minute, there's neat way, shape, and any way in hell's chance, in any way, shape or form, that Newcastle are going to be pushing for European football, that Sunderland are going to be pushing for European football.
Yeah, exactly.
Not because we don't have the team to do it, not that we don't have the club in terms of its stature, in terms of its facilities, its stadium. It's not that, like, we have the potential to do it. We just have owners that have no intention of doing it, which is the depressing thing.
What a way to end it on. That was my own fault. I asked the question, to be fair. Look, I mean, you're right. I think at the minute, at the moment, I mean, obviously, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I can't comment on Newcastle as much, but I would go as, I mean, I think certainly with Mike Ashley, I don't know what Mike Ashley's aim is at the minute, because as far as I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. As far as I know, I don't know if you're in debt. Our aim obviously is to clear it, and from there do what? I don't know. I mean, obviously we've had an owner that wanted to. Ellis Short tried to sell us in the summer. Mike Ashley isn't really backing Benitez as much as what I'd imagine, because look, guys, I might sort of end it there. The last question I'll ask Rhys then is, give a prediction to where you think we'll both give a prediction to where we both think each will finish this year, how we both think each will do, and then we'll call it a day. So right. I will let you start.
For Sunderland, I have absolutely no idea. Because I thought that you looked like you were doing all right, like a bit of an underwhelming draw at Derby. You went thumb Norwich, and from their point, everyone looks like they've got that tails wagging. You think, right, under Grayson, we don't have the superstars, but we've got some grafters in this team, etc. We're gonna push on, and we're gonna give it a good go. And then from then, it's kind of all felt a bit like you got a bit humiliated by Barnsley. Like Leeds just kind of it was like Leeds just barely had to get out of second gear to beat us 2-0 at the Stadium Light, which was worrying. But I'm gonna predict that you guys are gonna finish just shy of the playoffs. I think there's better teams in the Championship than Sunderland. There's a lot of bruises around the club, isn't there, from like the way that things have gone on for the last 10 years, and I don't know how much more the fans take. And judging by the attendances for the first game of the season, you just saw like a lot of you have just had enough, which is sad, but is also understandable. I think there is 6 better teams in the Championship at the minute.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I think I'd probably say for us about
probably. Don't think it's going to be in the playoffs.
No, I don't.
But I would say they'll finish about 7th, 8th, 9th, around that area. Like just miss out on the playoffs. You'll give it a go, and it'll probably go right to the wire. A final day race for the playoffs, etc. But I just don't think you'll make it, to be honest.
No, I don't. Okay, and for your boys.
For Newcastle, I think we're going to finish 15th. Because as I've said, a lot of people think this squad just isn't good enough to survive. I disagree. It might not have the quality, but it's got the work ethic. Moussa Sissoko or Matt Ritchie, who's the better footballer? Probably Moussa Sissoko. When he gets going, he's got the strength, he's got the pace, etc. That will win football. Man.
Who are you going to get more out of regularly? Obviously,
when he turns up. But you'll get a 10 out of 10 from Moussa Sissoko once every 6 months. Matt Ritchie will give you 7 out of 10 every other week, and that's what you'd rather have. These kind of players that we've got are going to, they'll stand up. We will get quite a few scrap 1-0 away wins this season. We'll go to the likes of Watford. We'll probably have one shot to the home sides, about 25, but we will defend for our bloody lives, and we will come away with points this year. And I think we'll be fine. We've got such a grafting squad, and if we get a few wins, if we get a bit of buzz going, if the fans do not get on the back of the players and the board and the manager, etc., just stick and just graft. If everyone pulls together, we're going to be absolutely fine. Not going to achieve anything incredible, but 15th place, I don't think we're going down.
Well, as a follow-up question, if Benitez walks, what do you think would happen? I don't think I agree with you. I don't think he will. Not at least not until the end of the season, put it that way. But if he did walk for whatever reason, well beforehand, how do you think you'd do?
We'd be looking at one of the biggest crises that this football club has ever seen. You thought it was bad when Keegan resigned, etc. Like, nah. For a lot of Newcastle fans, this is the last chance saloon that they have with this club. I've seen so many people saying if Benitez goes, that's it. I'm not going back. Like, we've managed to convince a Champions League winning manager, one of the best managers in the world, to take over at Newcastle, and the club aren't going to back him. Like, that's it. What hope is there for Newcastle United under Mike Ashley if Benitez isn't going to be given the respect he deserves? So if he's not going to respect us, he's not going to respect Rafa Benitez and the club, then we're going to pack it in as well. I'm not sure whether I would. I'd probably keep my season ticket at least for the end of the season, even if you walk tomorrow, because I just love going to the games.
The sad thing is we're Muppets though, aren't we? We're absolute Muppets, because even though we keep giving shit a lot of the time, we just keep on going back every time because we care too much.
Yeah. I dread to think what would happen if Benitez left, but that's... who knows? I'll not think of this.
Okay, then.
Would probably go down if he did.
I would say he'd probably go down if he left. I think right now you're probably finished around about 15th to 17th. I still think you'll have enough, because I think there's worse teams in there. Right, guys, well, this one went on a bit longer than intended, but it was quite a nice discussion and just a moan about North East football being shite. So look, yeah, thanks Rhys again for this. It was actually quite a nice little discussion, and this will be up shortly. So, well,
yeah,
no worries.
It's been a good little rant on a Monday morning.
I can tell you needed to get that out of your system, actually, to be fair.
I do feel better, to be honest.
It helps. It helps. Just think, I had a rant a week ago saying fucking Barnsley.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Might have to find that one.
Yeah, just don't even bother. Alright then, guys, thanks very much. Like, comment, subscribe if you wish to. Thanks again for Rhys, and we'll take care.
Yes.
See you guys later.